Good day to all of you. Today I am going to explain you about the Hecksher-Ohlin theory. Already we have learnt about classical theory of international trade. Under that we learned Adam Smith's theory of international trade, Ricardian theory of international trade. This is Hecksher-Ohlin theory. In today's session we are going to discuss about other names of Hecksher-Ohlin theory, factor endowments, Hecksher-Ohlin theory explanation, assumptions of Hecksher-Ohlin theorem, limitations of this theory, superiority of Hecksher-Ohlin theorem, and conclusion. Other names of Hecksher-Ohlin theory. We have so many names of Hecksher-Ohlin theory. First one we can call as modern theory of international trade. It is also called as Hecksher theory or theorem, factor proportions theory, factor endowment theory, relative factor endowment theory, Hecksher model. Definition of Hecksher theorem. According to Hecksher-Ohlin, a country will export the commodity whose production requires the intensive use of the nation's relatively abundant and cheap factor and import the commodity whose production requires the intensive use of the nation's relatively scarce and expensive factors. That means a country whose production is cheaper can produce and export those commodities to other countries and can import those commodities which is expensive to produce. For example, certain countries have extensive oil reserves but have very little iron ore. Meanwhile, other countries can easily access and store precious metals, but they have little in the way of agriculture. I hope you understand the meaning of this theory. Next comes factor endowments. This theory is also called as factor endowment theory, which includes land, labor, capital, natural resources, climate, etc. Modern theory of international trade. The Hecksher-Ohlin theory explains the basis of international trade in 3 stages. First comes the basis of international trade lies in the difference in the final price of the commodity. Second one, the difference in the final price of a commodity is due to the difference in the comparative cost of producing that commodity. Finally, it examines the root cause which produces this difference in the comparative cost. The difference in the comparative cost advantage occurs because of 2 reasons: the difference in the relative scarcity of factors of production and the different factors combination in the production function for producing different commodities. Next, assumptions of Hecksher-Ohlin theory. First one, perfect competition. Perfect competition exists in both the product and factor markets in each country. Next, mobility of factors. There is a perfect mobility of factors of production within a country, but factor mobility between the countries is not existent. Next, factors are identical. Factors are identical and homogeneous qualitatively in both the countries. Next comes factor supplies. Factor supplies in each country are fixed and fully employed, and there is constant returns to scale. Next one is trade is free and costless. There are no barriers to trade and no cost of transport. Next comes the physical amount of each productive factors possessed by the countries are different and can be measured. Next one, techniques. Techniques of producing identical goods are the same in both the countries, but the production function are different for different commodities. Next comes Factor intensity. Goods can be classified according to the factor intensity. The production function of the two commodities have different factor intensities. Next is factor intensities are non-reversible. These are the pictures of Hecksher Ohlin, the theory, that is the owner of this theory. The primary work behind the Hecksher-Ohlin model was a 1919 Swedish paper written by Eli Hecksher at the Stockholm School of Economics. His student Bertil Ohlin added to it in 1933. This theory explains in a two-country, two-factor, two-commodity. That is why it is called as 2 into 2 into 2 model framework. Explanation. Varying proportion of different factors of production. The theory believes that different countries are endowed with varying proportions of different factors of production. Next comes, countries have large population and labor resource. Some countries have large population and large labor resource. The others have abundance of capital but short of labor resources. Next comes high capital ratio. Capital abundant country presents a higher capital ratio than the labor abundant country presents. Large labor force. Thus, a country with large labor force will be able to produce those goods at a lower cost that involve labor intensive mode of production. Large supply of capital. Similarly, the countries with large supply of capital will specialize in those goods that involve capital intensive mode of production. Exports labor intensive goods. The former will export its labor intensive goods to the latter and import capital intensive goods therefrom. Next, imports capital intensive goods. After the trade, both the countries will have both types of goods at the least cost. All this means that the theory holds good if the capital abundant country has a distinct preference for the labor intensive goods and the labor abundant country has a distinct preference for a capital intensive goods. Technological background. Again, the theory does not hold good if the labor abundant country is technologically advanced in capital intensive goods or if capital abundant economy is technologically advanced in the production of labor intensive goods. Limitations. As like all the theories, this theories also have certain limitations. The assumption of 2 by 2 by 2 model is unrealistic. Like the classical theory, the Ohlin theory is static in nature. Factors are not homogeneous. Production functions or techniques cannot be homogeneous. Leontief paradox has falsified the theory. Like the classical theory, the Ohlin model is static in nature. Professor Harbler criticizes Ohlin for his failure to develop a comprehensive general equilibrium concept. He regards Ohlin's theory as, by and large, a capital equilibrium analysis. Next comes superiority over classical theory. Ohlin's theory is considered superior, is an improvement over the classical theory of international trade in many respects. Ohlin's theory is superior to the classical theory in that it regards international trade as a special case of interregional or interlocal trade as distinct from the classical theory, which considers international trade totally different from domestic trade. Second, the Ohlin model takes two factors, that is labor and capital, as against the one factor labor classical model, and is the superior to the latter. Again, the Ohlin theory is superior to the Ricardian theory in that it regards differences in factor supplies as basic for determining the pattern of international trade, while the later theory takes no notice of it. Finally, the Ohlin model is more realistic because it is based on the relative prices of factors which in turn influence the relative prices of goods, while the Ricardian theory considers the relative price of goods only. Conclusion. This model emphasizes the benefits of international trade and the global benefits to everyone when each country puts the most effort into the exporting resources that are domestically naturally abundant. All countries benefit when they import the resources they naturally lack, because a nation does not have to rely solely on international markets. It can take advantage of elastic demand. The cost of labor increases and marginal productivity declines as more countries and emerging markets develop. Trading internationally allows countries to adjust capital-intensive goods production, which would not be possible if each country only sold goods internally. Thank you girls. So I hope this video presentation is clear to you, and if you feel you have any grievances or any problems, please let me know so that I can rectify myself for further video presentation. Thank you.